ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.
Good evening. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Arlington Select Board on December 16th, 2024. I'm Select Board Chair Steve DeCourcy. Beginning with board members, joining me tonight are
John Hurd,
Eric Helmuth,
Diane Mahan,
Leonard Diggins,
James Feeney, Michael Cunningham, Town Council.
Ashley Marr, Board Administrator.
Tonight's meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format consistent with provisions in state law for remote participation in public meetings. Before we begin, please note the following. The meeting is being conducted in the Select Board chambers and over Zoom. It is being recorded and simultaneously broadcasted on ACMi. People wishing to join the meeting by Zoom may find information on how to do so on the town's website. People participating either in person or by Zoom are reminded that you may be visible to others and that if you wish to participate, we ask you to provide your full name and place of residence in the interest of developing a record of the meeting. Both Zoom participants and persons watching on ACMi can follow the posted agenda materials found on the town's website, specifically the Select Board agendas and minutes page. If technical difficulties sever the remote connection to one or more participants and efforts to reconnect within a reasonable period of time fail, the in-person meeting will continue at the discretion of the chair, provided that a quorum of the board is physically present. Zoom participants are encouraged to retain the phone number provided in their confirmation email for a backup audio connection to the meeting. There will be, I believe there's one opportunity tonight for public comment, and that's during our open forum period. If you are attending by Zoom and want to participate, please raise your hand when I announce that public comment is open. This is our last meeting of calendar year 2024, so let's see how much of the town's business we can get done tonight. And with that, we will move on to item number 2, acceptance of funds for Marie Krapelka Scholarship. And in our agenda package, we have a letter from the Arlington Municipal Federal Credit Union. We see a picture of Mrs. Krapelka on Zoom and hopefully broadcasted out, our former board administrator. We received a letter on December 12th from Bob Jefferson, who is the president of the town's Municipal Federal Credit Union, and the credit union's board voted to make a donation to the Dollar for Scholars program in memory of Mrs. Krapelka for 2 $1,000 scholarships. I'm going to read from a portion of that letter before we open up to board members. After announcing the vote for the two $1,000 scholarships, Mr. Jefferson writes, as most are aware, Marie's husband Chuck was a career Arlington firefighter, and her son Stephen is a current Arlington police officer. For these reasons, the board would like to see the scholarships go to an Arlington High School, Arlington Catholic High School, and/or Minuteman Vocational Technical High School student who plans to enroll in a criminal justice program and/or fire science program, or to be awarded to the son or daughter of a police officer or firefighter. And because it is a gift to the town, it requires a vote of the board. So with that, I will turn to board members. Mrs. Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move approval, and I'm very pleased that the credit union seemed fit to honor Marie in this way, and Mrs. Krapelka, and I know I can't tell you how many times I've had a lapse, and I know we've all done this, where I've gone and called her. And then when I realize, I use the phone in my head and talk to her that way. So I'm very thankful they're doing this. So move approval.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Further comments? Okay.
No, I'm delighted that we're doing this meeting. So as we all know, Marie meant a lot to all of us. And I certainly would not have run if she hadn't said I could run. So yeah, I'm glad we're doing this.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Yeah, and I know for all, there isn't a day that we come up to the office that we don't think about Marie. So I think this is a fitting tribute, and we really appreciate the generosity of the town's credit union. So on a affirmative vote by Mrs. Mahan, not a vote, but a motion for approval by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Hurd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It is a unanimous vote. Next is our consent agenda. That's items 3, 4, and 5. Item 3 is a request by Menominee Grill and Tavern for a late-night event, December 31st to January 1st. Item 4 is a request for a contractor drain layer license, Cranny Home Services. And item 5 is a reappointment to the Transportation Advisory Committee, Jim Stubbe, for a term to expire 12/31/27. We will be hearing from Mr. Stubbe later in the meeting, and so we're glad to have him here, but I will turn to board members.
Move approval.
Second. Great. Okay, on a motion by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mr. Helmuth for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is a unanimous vote. Next, item 6 is an appointment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. Kerry Sheehan for a term to expire October 31st, 2026. And the Board of Trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, there are 7 members. 1 member is a member of our Select Board, that's Mr. Helmuth, and there are 6 members who are approved, appointed by the Select Board. So before we introduce Ms. Sheehan, I'm going to turn to our member who is on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Mr. Helmuth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening, and I'm delighted to see Ms. Sheehan here on the screen. Ms. Sheehan, as we knew from the beginning that when she was identified as someone who might be willing to serve on the board, that she would be a great choice. She's been coming to our meetings over Zoom, making contributions in the Zoom chat, and it was an easy decision on the part of the chair and the town staff and myself to recommend her for appointment to this important post. Ms. Sheehan is a resident of Menominee Manor, and she will be addressing us tonight either over a voice, a text-to-voice application, and as a backup, I believe, the chat with our board administrator due to her accessibility needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Good evening, Ms. Sheehan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and you'd like to address the board. Go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Kerry Sheehan. After sitting in on my first meeting with the trust, I cried. For me to know a group of people like that meet regularly to make a change in something that has been a source of so much pain for me, well, it warmed my heart. It was just one more way Arlington reminded me I had finally found a safe space to live. I have lived experience dealing with affordable housing. I'm extremely committed to the work the trust does. I really think I will be an asset because of my lived experience. I know what this work can do for others like me. Having affordable housing saved my life. I couldn't dream of a better way to volunteer and give back to others like me in Arlington for changing my life and saving it. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sheehan. For your interest, Mr. Helmuth.
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, at the risk of hogging the mic, I would like to move approval and express to Carrie how beautiful I found your letter was that you wrote to us that's published, and your statement just now. I think that you will bring to the board the kind of personal lived experience that we really need to make good decisions about advancing affordable housing in Arlington. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Mr. Diggins.
I'll second it, and Mr. Helmuth said everything I was going to say.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Mrs. Mahan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Helmuth, for introducing us to Ms. Sheehan. And to Ms. Sheehan, thank you so much for doing this. I find that, as you cited, people who have the lived experience are really some of the best people that we can have on various committees. Because of the experience you've lived, I've lived sort of a parallel, different experience in terms of my family wasn't fortunate enough to buy a house, and I know what it's like, renting and living in subsidized housing and being fearful of saying something in your apartment needs to be fixed because the rent would go up or you'd be asked to leave. And if I hadn't actually lived that experience, I don't know that people would really believe it. So I think what we have in you, we're very fortunate. Obviously, you're very passionate and earnest, and as you cited, started from the teen center all the way up to today, and you're still hanging in there and persevering. So you definitely are someone that I admire. I look forward to, as my colleagues do, and especially Mr. Helmuth, working with you and the other members in the future. And I'm really excited by what you'll be able to bring to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Okay. And I echo the comments of my other members. Thank you so much for your interest in serving, Ms. Sheehan. So on a motion by Mr. Helmuth, seconded by Mr. Diggins, all in favor say aye. Aye. It is a unanimous vote, and best of luck, and thank you again. Okay. Moving on, we will move to item number 7. Poet Laureate Screening Committee. This is the town manager designee. And so before the designee addresses the board, we had a slight change to our screening committee last year. Town meeting didn't change this appointment. One of the 5 members of the Poet Laureate Screening Committee is a designee of the town manager with the advice and consent of the select board. Mr. Feeney has submitted a letter to us that his recommendation is Mr. Diggins. Mr. Diggins is now appearing before us, so if you could let us know why you're interested and anything else you want to add.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm here in this position not only because I like the perspective, I can see all of you at once, but also the town manager said that if I was going to fill his position, that I needed to behave like any other person that would fill this position. So here I am, and I'm dropping the mask so I can read more quickly, and get us out of here. So it never would have occurred to me to be on the Poet Laureate Selection Committee, the PLSC, but Stuart Ikeda sent me an email saying something along the lines of, I know you're really busy, and I know this is a long shot, but given your strong interest in poetry, I'm wondering if you'd be interested in being part of the PLSC. Now, it took me the better part of a month to decide to run for the select board when I was asked to consider running for the select board back in 2019, but my response to Stuart was relatively instantaneous. To be clear, I do not feel qualified to be the Poet Laureate, neither if I'm being asked to do so, or to think of myself as a poet, more on that later, but I do have the enthusiasm and the drive to be part of the committee that helps to select the next Poet Laureate. I also like being in a position to assist the PLSC as the nexus to the town manager and the town meeting, as was the case earlier this year when we amended the bylaws regarding the PLSC. So far, the experience has been even better than I had hoped. Amy Hampy is very organized and she brings a very positive energy. Anyone who knows Lydia Sear knows that she is an exuberant force of nature, and the current Poet Laureate Jean Flanagan and the former Poet Laureate Stephen Ratner bring a passion, expertise that increases our confidence that we are looking in the right places and that we will make the best decision. Now, with respect to me being a poet, again, I am not one, but I'm a poet wannabe, and as you may recall, I have this thing for haikus. It used to be that we could go only a few months that we couldn't go a few months without me uttering a haiku. I think the last time I recited my own creation was when we brought the current Poet Laureate on board. I stopped partly because I didn't want to overdo it with the haikus and partly because I was just too preoccupied as chair. For some reason, I'm not recalling the exact reason, last year I decided to see if I could find online the translations of the Tao Te Ching by the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. I first read the Tao Te Ching during my high school years, and it made a strong impression on me. In my search, I found a PDF with 8 translations with varying styles and approaches. As I read them, I was tremendously impressed with how relevant they are to my current role on the select board as one of the town's leaders. Then I had the idea to do my own synthesis, or it's perhaps better to call it distillation, of the 8 translations of the 81 verses into 81 haikus. It turned out to be a nice challenge and adventure, and poetic adventure, literally. I got a lot out of it, and I offer the haikus, which I will not read tonight, to you and to the public for 2 reasons. One, I hope it proves that the town manager was justified in appointing me, and 2, I hope that you and anyone else will be inspired to check out the Tao Te Ching again, or perhaps for the first time. It provides some interesting food for thought that comes in 81 morsels of various sizes. If you want to play a little game, then pick a haiku, read it, ponder it for a bit, and then read the corresponding translations. The haikus and the translations are by now on Noah's agenda. And I've also added 3 haikus that were inspired by the current Poet Laureate style and her call for entries to the Arlington 250 anthology. I didn't submit to the anthology for various reasons, so this is going to be the first time anyone's going to see those, but her style is to have the text going vertically, and so I was really inspired by that, and as I said, I liked the whole notion of the anthology for Arlington 250, so check those out, and in conclusion, well, actually, one more paragraph. Since I've gone on for a while, I will not read those either. Also, let's forgo the expressions of appreciation, and let me leave you and everyone else with a teaser. I have discovered 104 more translations, and I'm in the process of working on a much bigger project. So, in conclusion, thanks for your trust in me, and thanks to the members of the Poet Laureate Selection Committee for your warm welcome and delightful collegiality.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins, and thank you for your passion on, with both the committee and with haikus and poetry in general. So I will turn to other board members. Mr. Hurd.
Move approval. And isn't the central theme of the poetry world that everyone's a poet, right? Whatever's in your heart, it comes out with good poetry.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Mr. Helmuth.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that, although I noticed that our candidate didn't stay put in case we had any wanted to grill him over anything, but I think this is probably a shoo-in. I do appreciate my colleagues cheerleading for the arts. That's a tradition on the board that I know Mr. Curo and others had an enormous impact with this position and with many other things. I'm delighted to see the work continue. I'm sure that you will provide a lot of energy and apparently research to the role.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Okay, so on a motion for approval by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mr. Helmuth, and just to clarify, Attorney Cunningham, can all 5 members vote on this?
No.
Okay. All right, let's hope it's not 2-2.
It's up to Mr. Diggins to, if he chooses to recuse himself.
Okay, all right. So on a motion for approval by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mr. Helmuth, all in favor say aye. Aye. It is a unanimous vote, and with Mr. Diggins recusing himself. All right, thank you very much.
Put that in a haiku.
Now on to licenses and permits. Item 8 for approval. We have 15 categories here of licenses. All of these applicants have been before us before. We're at that stage because we're at the end of the calendar year to renew for next year. Ms. Maher has provided us with a spreadsheet, and maybe if you want to put that up, just the first, I don't think we'll go through it one by one. I do have a question for Attorney Cunningham. Can we vote all of these as one vote for the various categories?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I will point out to the board before I open it up for motions, there are a few that we may want to consider putting some conditions on the vote. And so there are some notes that we received from Ms. Maher and from the various memos, inspectional services and the fire department. And I just want to go through them now. The planning department, there was 2 issues that they identified. One with Giles Liquors, that has to do with the signage. That license was transferred to Mass Ave Wine and Spirits. Evidently, the sign still says Giles, so there either has to be some sort of DBA or something that they have to do to cure that. Trist had an issue with their outdoor dining plan, and that needs to be updated again. None of these are fatal to the renewal, but they're conditions that we may want to put on. There are 3 that came from inspectional services in the fire department. Zumza on Mass Ave. There was an issue with a basement emergency light not working, a certificate of inspection not being clearly posted, and some work that needs to be done on exhaust hoods. The American Legion Post 39 has some emergency battery lights that need to be updated. Szechuan's Dumplings, again, emergency lights and fire extinguisher there has expired, needs a little bit of work there. So with those 5, again, it's for the, once a motion comes forward, we may want to consider making that conditional on these items being cured within a 3-month period. but I'll leave that to board members. The one other item, and there is no application before us, Ms. Mara pointed out, Abbott's Frozen Custard has 2 locations. We did not receive a renewal on either location. Now, they're closed for the winter, so there will be no vote on that. If they do want to reopen, they will have to come back to us next year. So with that, I will open it up to board members for any questions or motions. Mrs. Mahan.
Move approval and of licenses and permits for license renewal. And one comment and one question. First comment is I do appreciate and want to thank the chair for, at previous agendas, going through and sort of getting updates concerning the all alcohol and something that I think is not on here, which is cannabis, but I think it's good and a good demonstration by this board that, you know, we are cognizant of the many different licenses, common victular, business operations, food, et cetera, to stay on top of that, which leads into my question that I would have through you, Mr. Chair, to the town manager, in that the situation that we had with, up on Mass Ave, with the food establishment that was there, that, to my memory, didn't serve food, but was an establishment in business and really fell behind on the necessary permits that they needed. And when we went through that process, the board, and I believe the town manager made some representations regarding the Board of Health of assisting the select board not to slip into that pattern again where it goes by. And I was just wondering if I could just ask the manager for just a few sentences concerning what other steps we have in place.
Sure. Mr. Feeney?
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. I would say 2 things. First, you would see here that during the renewal process, the Board of Health took the opportunity via their memo to capture exactly which businesses had shuttered, as well as which ones had opened in this calendar year, but also captured via list the businesses that are currently undergoing their, what we call the plan review process, to either change owners or reopen in the same location. And then perhaps more germane to the instance you reference is the fact that we used our OpenGov online permitting software to capture within the workflow for issuing a certificate of occupancy a step whereby select board office staff will get to be notified and have to approve before inspectional services will be issuing a certificate of occupancy to a potential applicant in that space. So using the technology that we have available to us now to try to close those gaps where perhaps there wasn't a systematic way of communicating between departments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurd. Any further
And
comments?
just to clarify, is that with the conditions that the chair described?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hurd, as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Including the 3 months period?
Yeah, so the 3 months for the applicants that I read off, that have the various deficiencies that need to be cured. Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Hurd, for that, and thank you, Attorney Cunningham. Okay, so on a motion for approval by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Hurd, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, that is a unanimous vote. Next is open forum. Except in unusual circumstances, any matter presented for consideration of the board shall neither be acted upon nor a decision made the night of the presentation in accordance with the policy under which the open forum was established. It should be noted that there is a 3-minute time limit to present a concern or a request. I will start with the chambers. Is there anybody that wishes to be heard on open forum? Seeing nobody. Anybody on Zoom?
Seeing no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that concludes open forum for this evening. Next, under traffic rules and orders and other business, item 9, authorized Transportation Advisory Committee to review traffic rules and orders and, if applicable, propose amendments to incorporate prior board votes. This was put on at the request of Mr. Diggins. I don't know if you want to talk to it or have Mr. Feeney speak to it.
I think probably better for me to speak to it. Yeah, I did talk
Certainly.
with Mr. Feeney about it, so it's not a surprise, So thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, so a while ago, it was brought to our attention actually by a resident, that some of our no turn on reds were not reflected, in our traffic rules and order, and we discovered that there were other, items that were missing, and so the question was, how do we get the traffic rules and order up to date? And so Mr. Stubby and I had a conversation, and he feels that TAC is in a position to work on that. It's probably going to be a lot of work. The first goal will be just to get the traffic rules and order in sync with reality, and then the next larger part will be to figure out what happened. Not so much what happened that's wrong, but what we have. Why are they there? Why do the current rules as we see them exist? And that will require going through the minutes to track it down. I don't know to what extent we'll be successful, but at least we'll get the current document in sync. So I talked with you, Mr. Chair, and you felt that it was appropriate for us to bring it to our colleagues to get their approval and then send it off to TAC.
Okay, thank you. So would you like to make a motion on that, Mr. Diggins? Or-
Sure. So I'll make a motion that we request that TAC bring our current traffic rules and order up to date with the current lay of the land.
Okay. All right, and thank you. And before I ask for a second, I just want to clarify too. When Mr. Diggins and I spoke, a lot of this is historical, that goes back perhaps several years in terms of votes that weren't updated. And the more recent votes, we now have a procedure with Ms. Myers, the board administrator, when we do have a vote and we change our traffic rules and orders, she's making that change and sending it out to board members. So that's why I put in the if applicable. It makes
Right.
sense to have the full review and to go back here and whatever's found. And then it sounds like you're going to have one step to find where there may be gaps between votes and what's actually in the rules and orders. And then are you, I guess, just gaining an understanding of that, and maybe there'll be a report back later at some point if there's anything that you find any other inconsistencies. Is that fair to say? Or?
It's fair to say, and I will say that we'll report back as often as the board wants to hear from us, so yeah.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Stubby, you had your hand up. I don't know if you're going to address the board, come on up.
No, I was just going to comment that the latest date in that document is 1999.
Yeah, okay.
So it really has not been updated in quite a while, but in fairness, if you look at Cambridge and Somerville, they're a little better than us, but still
Okay.
not so good. So
Okay.
it's not like we're alone in this pass, but there's a lot of work in there to sync up with everything that's happened, I think.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Okay, Mr. Helmuth?
Mr. Diggins, you have something?
Yeah, we did. So that's, just to be clear, it says that it was the latest date that anything was changed. It's very clear that there have been changes since that date. So that date wasn't updated. And so we just need to come up with a process.
Sure.
And I understand how things happen. It's like we make a vote, and some things get added, some things don't. And then there may be changes that have happened on the road that have nothing to do with what we voted, and so, as I said, let's just make sure that the traffic rules and order match what we see on the roadways, and then we'll figure out when and how it happened.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Diggins. Mr. Helmuth?
Thank you. I'm glad to second that. I'm not persuaded that we need to vote to authorize this because, TAC can take up its work, but I do want to express my appreciation for TAC checking in with us to see if this is something that we'd like TAC to do. And I would. I think that, I know that in my term as chair, the select board administrator and I discovered a couple of things that were out of sync, and I think the town manager may have as well. So those that were updated, I think maybe we didn't grab the date. But I think the point is well taken. I do have a question for the chair of TAC through the chair, if I may.
Certainly.
And if it may, perhaps you could come back up to the microphone, Mr. Stubby.
Oh, if you want to come back up, Mr. Stubby, for a question.
Thank you. And you may as well stay put.
I was
given
going to
the
say,
next
may as
item.
well say.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the exercise is great, but, so how do you see this new and large job affecting the timeline for existing referrals for, that you have in the hopper in the backlog?
So right now, we're just a little bit quiet. We also just added 4 associate members at our last meeting. So we've actually got some extra horsepower, new people who want to be involved, who want to get involved. And I looked at this when I talked to Lynn and go, well, that's a great place to throw somebody in the deep end and go, they're not going to go hurt anything. It'll take them a little while to get their arms around things. They'll have contact with people in the town. So I honestly don't think it'll take a lot of time. From a calendar point of view, I think the piece that it will draw on is my time. I mean, I've done a lot of documentation in the past, so I look at that and go, oh, that's ugly. You know, we could do a much better job of having an outward-facing document for the town, although it is the template that MUTCD puts out. So, you know, maybe we don't change it for that very reason alone. But
Great.
That would be mine.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, it's worth doing, and I'm glad to hear that you don't think it'll materially delay any of the current referrals that we have.
I would think other things would take priority, especially if they're high safety visibility things,
excellent.
right? They're going to have to
Yes,
take
thank you.
priority over.
Yeah, no, I'll appreciate that. Finally, and then a question for the chair, just for some clarity on, I mean, the committee, on the one hand, I think TAC will be looking at past votes of the board that would have materially changed the traffic rules and orders. On the other hand, it might have been so long ago that we forgot. And, and because they weren't documented, I don't know if there's going to be conflicts. So will this process result in the rules and orders being updated as part of that process, or would any official updates still come back to the board for a vote?
Yeah, I would see it, that it would require board vote because it is our traffic rules and orders. So anything that is found or discovered, it would come back as a recommendation
Good.
to the board.
Makes sense to me. All right, cool.
Okay. Attorney Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that clarification from Mr. Helmuth. I think that's the appropriate course of action. This work is done by the Transportation Advisory Committee, but then will come back to the board for final approval of any amendments.
Thank you, Attorney Cunningham. Anything further? Right. So on a motion by Mr. Diggins, seconded by Mr. Helmuth, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is a unanimous vote, and now we are on to item 10, which is Mrs. Stubby's item that's TAC recommendation, special speed regulations. And Mr. Stubby was before us recently. We did vote a staged approach, starting with the removal of speed limit signs on Broadway and Park Ave, and I understand that approval came from the state rather swiftly, and that's
It did, yes.
why you're back before us now. So if you could just
That
go
was
through
part of it. So it came swiftly, and then working with Mr. Feeney, we had a very quick turnaround from DPW to take all of the signs down. Literally, we got the request in, and the signs were gone in about 2 days, along with the posts and everything else. So nobody ever knew they were there, but a number of people actually reached out and said, they're missing, was that you guys? So they actually really did not, the public noticed. The people had been complaining about it for a while. I actually noticed that the higher speed limits are gone, and they're going, so when are the new signs coming in? And with that kind of draw from the community and with the speed with which we actually went through this process, we're going, you know what, if we can take down those higher speed limit signs everywhere in town quickly, which is basically the reason for accelerating this part of it, that's a good thing. And then we'll work to do the signage as DPW, and town manager can, work it into the schedule and get everything up there. And we're not looking at that has to accelerate, but we'll do it at best speed we can. But that's really the reason to bring it forward a little bit faster than maybe we had originally intended. But we also didn't know we would get, I think at the time we started this, we thought MassDOT was going to take 6 months to get back to us, because that was Andover's experience, but it was less than 2 weeks. So.
Great. So the request, just so we're clear here, the request tonight is for the board to rescind all special speed regulations above the statutory townwide 25-mile-an-hour limit.
And you actually voted on that at the original meeting. This is sort of a status to accelerate the original intent.
Sure, okay.
That's really what the vote, what you're.
Right, okay, all right, thanks for that clarification, because I thought we had limited that vote just to the 2 streets. We did it all townwide, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Stubby. I will turn to board members. Anybody like to start? Mr. Diggins? Mrs. Mahan?
Will move approval, understanding previous vote sort of piggybacks on that. But I believe inherent in this vote is also something I believe the TAC's already doing, which is moving ahead to assess 20-mile-per-hour zones. And I believe setting up a process, if you want to just speak to that, just so.
Let's just stay up here until we have the vote.
I was going to ask you that question, but since you brought it up, thank you.
If you could just correct me.
We're working, that same working group is working on the first model safety zone for Park and Mass Ave, not necessarily caused by the recent, fatality there, but because that's one of the most congested areas in the town. We want to actually work through the process so we know how to bring it to you all. We know what to include. We make sure we're okay with Attorney Cunningham on what do we do and what do we have to do for speed study to make sure we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's and saying, okay, this is how we line up the MassDOT, this is how we interpret the engineering study they request, and then have a method for Arlington to say, yeah, that's good, let's use this as a method going forward. And then we'll broaden it out to other areas in town that we think are appropriate or anyone suggests that we look at, basically. So that should come fairly soon. I think we're about halfway through that right now.
And then just a procedural question that once that does come to fruition and is outlined, ultimately, is that something that the town manager will approve and put into place and notify the board, or will it require a vote of the board that that's the process? I'm a little murky on our traffic rules and order hat. So is that for us to finally say yes or no to, or is it the town manager who lets us know? He says yes or no, and we say thank you.
Attorney Cunningham or Mr. Feeney, would you like to?
Do I know the legal answer to that question? Not necessarily, but it would be my expectation, as we've had the board vote on really any speed limit matters, that it would be before the board to endorse and support via vote.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Attorney Cunningham, or that's?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I agree with the manager that within the board's jurisdiction under the traffic rules and orders, it would come back, in my opinion, it would come back before the board for approval.
Great, thank you. And that was my understanding from the earlier memo, too, that there'd be a recommendation on that.
Oh, okay.
It also needs to go in the traffic rules and orders.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, all right, good.
I just want to
Thank you
make sure
for
in
the
some
question,
form it's
so we're
coming
clear on
back, because
that.
I'm sure once people hear, after the process is set up and established, they're going to be asking all of us, what's the process? How do I do it?
We already get a number
Thank
of
you.
requests
Thank you.
for them.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan.
Move approval, if I have it already.
Mr. Diggins?
Yeah, I'll second that, and I'll add, we're having a robust discussion about those safety zones and how extensive to make them and how quickly to make them, widely, available, that's not quite the right word, but widely distributed, and one good thing about us passing this motion will be that anyone and everyone will know that the maximum speed limit in town, anywhere, is 25 miles per hour. Real simple. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Okay, and one thing I do just want to add, and this goes with items 9 and 10, we had some discussions with Mr. Stubby, and I talked to Mr. Feeney too, in terms of periodically TAC coming back to us with updates. I think we settled perhaps on a semi-annual type basis, and we'll work on that after the new year in terms of when that would take place. So for item 10, on a motion by Mrs. Mahan for approval, seconded by Mr. Diggins, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is a unanimous vote. Thank you. Okay, item 11 is under correspondence received, a request for a plaque near 231 Broadway honoring VisiCalc from Paul Selker. Mrs. Mahan?
I'd like to move receipt of correspondence received and refer the request of Mr. Selker to our Public Memorials Committee, unless somebody tells me different. And it's funny, you talked about VisiCal and Lotus 123, and my first nonprofit job was with a nonprofit called Resolve, which was for infertility, back in late 80s, early 90s, which there really wasn't much on it. And I remember I sat down, and all I had available to me then was, I had heard of VisiCal, but it was the two software programs they had was Lotus 123 and DBase 3. And I created my own software program. So reading the letter, I do appreciate what Mr. Selker sent me. I set the framework of the Resolve Infertility software. But anyways, that's my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Helmuth?
Thank you. Just a question, Mr. Chair, just to make sure that we'd send this to the right place. Is it within the purview of the Memorials Committee to do something that doesn't recognize a person? Because I'm just looking at their charter, and I wonder if, there's an obvious connection here. I'm not sure whose purview it would be, whose lane it would be, but are they going to know what to do with this?
I think I was referring to them, the request of the plaque near 231, I'm blanking on the street,
231 Broadway.
231 Broadway, and then regarding anything moving forward in terms of a proclamation, recognizing the person, as Mr. Helmuth states. I guess I would leave that to the chair to, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think first thing, let's send it to the Public Memorials Committee, see what they come back with, and then we'll make a decision.
Yeah. Well, I wonder with some of the plaques too, that would the Historical Commission have a role here because of historic plaque? I'm not sure what era we're talking about though, so. But those, I think, this might be a shared jurisdiction or it might not. Ultimately it'd be up to us and the town manager. So I think I'll second the motion to refer that, I think with an understanding that they should be in contact with us and, weigh in on that, but they may feel like other people need to
Sure.
talk about this one.
Okay, all right, and we'll include that as part of the request. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anything further? Okay, so on a motion by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by
Mr. Helmuth?
Mr. Helmuth seconded this one. For receipt and referral to the Public Memorials Committee, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It is a unanimous vote, and we are now on to new business. Ms. Marr?
No new business, thank you.
Attorney Cunningham?
No new business, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Feeney?
No new business.
Mr. Diggins?
No one does this.
Mrs. Mahan?
Just very briefly, I see from the town's website as well as the Facebook website that we're starting to roll out the translation services. I'm not going to say that correctly, and I'm very excited by that. For some reason, I have the number 46 in my head. I don't know if we're going to have 46 languages available for interpretation, but I've been sharing the few that I get that come in, I think Mandarin I got, Spanish, and a few others. So I look forward, I assume there'll be something a bit more formalized in the future to announce that, but I know Mr. Feeney had discussed that with us in terms of goals and as well as individually. I'm very excited to see that. So I look forward to, and I'm not sure if that also falls under DEI. So whoever it is that's going to do the official rollout, I look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Helmuth?
No new business.
Mr. Hurd?
No new business.
Okay, I have two items. First of all, people may have seen over the weekend, one of the things that we have in our town, we have a very proud history of our hockey team at Arlington High School. And Saturday night, our hockey coach, John Missouri, earned his 400th win, which is quite a milestone. It was a home game against Wakefield, so he still has 295 more wins to catch Mr. Burns, but has the most wins in the state. But it's a remarkable accomplishment. So
30 more years too, right?
So congratulations to John on that. And second thing I wanted to say is over the past month, I've had a number of discussions with my family, friends, residents in town, and I've made a decision that I will be a candidate for re-election to the board this April. It's been an honor to serve on the select board with my colleagues, and I hope to have the opportunity to continue serving the town and working with my colleagues and town staff. So I wanted to make that announcement this evening before the end of the year. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Helmuth?
Move to adjourn with an expression of happiness for the last thing we just heard.
Yay! To both, second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mahan. So a motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.